Over the past 11 years of the Modi government, India's national security posture has transformed with a greater degree of purpose and clarity. It has triggered debates and polarized both domestically and abroad. But what has been achieved is an undeniable India that sees national security in a new light. I've picked 11 of the most defining strategic achievements, according to me, under the Modi government. Number one, of course, is Operation Sindoor, India's new doctrine seen in action. It's the biggest cross-border strike since 1971, brought together fighters, drones, warships, missiles. It was a tri-service, full-spectrum strike carried out over just a few days that demonstrated India's ability to punish, not just deter. Number two, Uri and Balakot, that changed our rules of engagement on terror forever. The 2016 surgical strikes and the 2019 Balakot airstrikes were turning points for this country. They shattered old thresholds and made overt kinetic response to terror a permanent part of India's playbook, and there's no going back. Number three, the Galwan standoff that stopped China in its tracks, and the larger standoff in eastern Ladakh. The 2020 clash in Galwan triggered a military lockdown that stalled Chinese moves in eastern Ladakh. India's response was immediate, aggressive and firm, altering Chinese behavior at the line of actual control. Number four, very important. This was a recommendation that was made after the Kargil war in 1999, but finally happened under this government. The creation of the Chief of Defence Staff post for true joint warfare. India finally created the CDS post, is now at the core of planning, integration and warfighting synergy across the Army, Navy and Air Force. The Agnipath scheme is number five, which puts youth at the front line. India overhauled its recruitment with Agnipath and the Agniveers. Despite criticism, a huge amount of politics, especially on the road to elections, Agniveers were deployed in active roles during Operation Sindoor, proving the reform is combat-worthy and at least partially future-ready. There will be modifications needed, and the real test will, of course, come next year when one full batch completes its tenure, but it is on track. Number six, air defense shield reaching full maturity. From S-400s to Akash systems and indigenous radar networks, India's integrated air defense is now fully responsive and has been plugged into an anti-drone network as well. It was tested under fire during Operation Sindoor and performed with precision. Past takes about gaps in India's air defense shield have hopefully been plugged, but there is much more work to do. Much has been achieved. Number seven, Make in India has finally got some real defense teeth. 75% of the 2025-26 capital budget is reserved for military hardware and weapons made right here in India. Over 5,000 items this government has ensured are now banned for import. This is Make in India with battlefield relevance that benefits Indian industry. Number eight, defense exports have boomed from zero to a stunning 23,622 crore rupees. That's right, India's defense exports have jumped 34 times in just the last 11 or 12 years. From BrahMos to Pinaka, radars, warships, India is now supplying weapons globally, not just buying them. By the way, our biggest export customer is the United States. Did you know that? Number nine, nuclear attack submarines have received the green light. It's a proposal that had been languishing for many years, and it was finally given the go-ahead just a couple of years ago, making it one of the biggest achievements of this government. India cleared the long-delayed program to build indigenous nuclear-powered attack submarines. This will give India a deep-sea strike capability and unmatched deterrence in the Indian Ocean, especially in the face of an aggressive and hostile and intrusive Chinese Navy. Number 10, global evacuation operations have showcased India's incredible national security reach. From Operation Kaveri in Sudan to the Ukraine war to the COVID repatriations, India has evacuated a stunning 3 crore people over the last decade, proving the military's logistical depth and readiness for any contingency. And finally, 11, the huge leveling of the playing field between the defense PSUs and the private sector that has even entered the field of military aircraft manufacture stands out as one of the biggest achievements of Modi's 11. Startups and MSMEs have broken into the defense core. Over 2,400 crore rupees worth of contracts awarded to IDEX startups and medium and small enterprises. The future of the Indian military's innovation is now being written in labs, garages, small factories across the country by cutting-edge companies and startups. There have been strides in higher defense management, jointmanship, military diplomacy with groupings like the Quad and more, but those are still work in progress, and the national security story is clearly one in rapid evolution. Well, you've heard about the highlights from me. Now let's hear about Modi's 11 from 3 chiefs who've served during the last decade. And who better to talk about the national security paradigm and achievement during Modi's 11 than someone who's been at the helm of affairs of the Indian Army. It's our privilege to have with us on this special broadcast General Manoj Pande, the 29th Chief of the Army Staff. He was in the hot seat of the Indian Army between April 2022 and June 2024. Welcome, General Pande. Thanks very much for being with us. This spotlight on national security is very, very timely now, obviously, because we are less than a month from what has been a historic military operation that we've called Operation Sindoor. So I'd like to start this discussion on the Modi 11 national security achievements by asking for your views on Operation Sindoor, sir.
Firstly, thank you, Shiv, for having me here. Indeed, like you said, Sindoor has redefined our security paradigm. And in fact, it has redefined our strategic outlook, established certain new normals in terms of how we deal with our security challenges, especially in the context of counter-terrorism. Also, the kind of clarity and convergence that was displayed between the political aim, the political leadership, and the military strategy is something to be noted. In terms of utility of force, I think it is shown as to how force can be utilized to achieve strategic objectives. Also, if I may say here, while defense and diplomacy are complementary, this has shown that as to how defense can come on its own and contribute to meeting strategic objectives. In terms of our response to what happened on 22nd April, I think it was based on, it was a principled, calibrated retaliation that we undertook, shaped by our leadership, shaped by firm resolve, and shaped by a very calculated application of force. Also, it has established a new paradigm wherein we have dealt or we have displayed as to how restraint with strength and how precision with purpose can be applied to achieve our strategic objectives. Our response was also based on very strong and firm footing of both legal as well as moral issues. And I feel it also demonstrated as to how our country's economic and military power can be combined and then executed through application of both military as well as non-military means. And if I were to sum up, I think what we saw is a manifestation and validation of what has happened or what has been happening over the last decade or so, be in terms of indigenous equipment, be it in terms of our higher defense management and the reforms that have been undertaken, and number of other things that have happened in the security domain.
Let's go into all of those building blocks one by one, because, and I'm glad you mentioned it like that, General Pande, because this didn't happen overnight. Things have been changing gradually over the last 10, 11 years, which has led up to India responding to this attack in a very decisive, cohesive, tri-service manner. So whether it is higher defense management, whether it is Agnipath, whether it is air defense, whether it is all of the other things you mentioned, this big focus on indigenous equipment, something that you have stood very strongly for as well, they all came together to manifest in Operation Sindoor. Let's go into each of these one by one. I'd like to start with self-reliance and the focus on indigenous equipment. How important has that been? Because that has gradually increased over the last decade, visibly, sir.
Absolutely. And just like you rightly pointed out, self-reliance, not only in terms of our acquisition of new weapon systems, but equipment, but also in terms of sustaining the war effort. Self-reliance for critical defense equipment under the overall ambit of Atmanirbharta is something which has been very crucial, or one of the major aspects of what we have achieved during the last decade or so. And there are three important aspects to it, or what we have been able to achieve. One is the participation of private industry in this entire effort. The second is also the participation and encouragement or the contribution of a very vibrant startup ecosystem that we have in a country. And the third is tapping the innovation potential. I think when we talk of self-reliance, it is all of these three that have come together. The private industry has stepped up in a very effective manner. Our defense exports have increased. So I think the results are there for all of us to see. The services and the government on their part are playing their role well. So I see a lot of potential and promise for our indigenous defense protection as we move forward. And this was also evidenced during Op Sindoor, where you had indigenous weapon systems, be it Akash, be it BrahMos, which were made good use of.
And from the army, now we come to the Indian Navy, and there have been many national security milestones over the last 11 years. Joining us is former Chief of the Naval Staff, the 23rd Indian Navy Chief, Admiral Sunil Lanba. He was the chief between 2016 and 2019, a very, very important phase in India's military, India's rules of engagement with its neighbors and national security at large. Admiral Lanba, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us on this special Modi's 11 broadcast as we look back on the big national security achievements of the last 11 years. Your opening thoughts, sir. We're less than a month, from Operation Sindoor. From that perspective, what would you say are your big national security highlights of the last 11 years?
Shiv, thank you for inviting me to participate in this debate. I think one of the main past 11 years, when you look at things, there has been a greater synergy and integration and cohesion between the three armed forces, Army, Navy and Air Force. There has been greater focus on capacity building. I'm now talking of military capacity in all the three dimensions, whether it's land, sea, or air. There has also been a shift on indigenous manufacture and development of equipment. I mean, this was nothing new for the Navy. We've been doing indigenous manufacture of ships for the past 60, 70 years. But there has been a great deal of focus. And I think the most important thing since the Modi government has been a focus on the maritime dimension, not only towards the Indian Navy, but as a holistic view on maritime issues, whether it's port development through Sagar Mala. They've also announced a recent initiative of manufacture of merchant ships within India.
Yes.
I mean, it's been a sad story where Indian trade being carried on Indian flagships have been reducing as a percentage as time has gone by, and this is one area which we really need to focus is to revive the Indian shipbuilding.
And joining us now in the wake of Operation Sindoor, when the Indian Air Force is squarely in the spotlight, is a man who has been in many hot seats, whether it is in a combat cockpit or the helm of affairs in the Indian Air Force. Thank you very much, Air Chief Chaudhari, for your time. This is a time when the Air Force is front and center. Everyone is talking about Operation Sindoor. Opening assessment, your first words, Air Chief Chaudhari, on Operation Sindoor and what we know about it.
I think the trust reposed in the Indian Air Force by the nation as a whole was fulfilled in all measures by the kind of action that we've seen over those 90 hours. The primary roles of the Indian Air Force during an offensive action like this have all seen complete success in all aspects. And I think every single member from the chief down to every operator in the field deserves a pat on his or her back.
Somewhat lesser sung heroes of this were the air defense units that did a stellar job in preventing any air intrusions, etc. We do know that the air defense shield in many ways reached a great measure of maturity under your stewardship of the Air Force. We saw the S-400s come in while you were there. Those saw combat action this time as well. Just give us a sense of how important this Agni Pariksha, as it were, was for our air defense network, sir, because it was tested to the hilt.
Yeah, firstly, let me tell you that we will take no credit away from the air defense operators.
Yeah.
I think they did a stellar job. Their performance was just simply outstanding. Now, coming to the entire gamut of air defense and how we've grown over the ages. Firstly, of course, you are aware of the new systems that we inducted, like you just mentioned, the S-400 or the MR-SAM. At the lower level of the spectrum, we have inducted large number of counter-UAS systems, both hard kill as well as soft kill systems. And a very heartening thing to note is that most of these systems have been designed, developed, and manufactured by small industries within our country.
Yes.
So this was a huge boost to the MSMEs, when we started buying off the shelf and helping them in designing and developing a large number of counter-UAS systems. It's very heartening to see the way these systems were utilized, the way they were, like you said, Agni Pariksha, or they were actually tried out in real combat. Some of them probably were just inducted maybe just a few months ago.
Yeah.
And all of them have proved their worth. I think the Indian industry, the small scale, the MSMEs and the startups and all that, they really require a huge pat on the back for what they've come out with.